This segment is sponsored by Saga Cigars. Every new blend borrows from the past, and the Saga Blend No. 7 has done just that. It's the perfect combination of timeless knowledge of traditional tobaccos and the newer balance that today's cigar enthusiasts come to expect and love in a finer cigar. Leveraging 6 generations of experience and tradition of the Reyes family, the Saga Blend No. 7 delivers a unique, full-flavor, medium-bodied cigar. The cigar is highlighted by a Brazilian wrapper over a blend of Central American and Dominican tobacco. Available in 3 sizes at an affordable price, the Saga Blend No. 7 is sure to please and bring together past and present. And by Roberto P. Duran Premium Cigars, one of the fastest-growing boutique cigar companies providing smokers a portal into the old Cuban tradition of perfect balance and the lost art of progressive flavor construction. Roberto P. Duran began his career in tobacco over 2 decades ago in Havana, where his reputation grew within Cuban circles. The creation of Roberto P. Duran Premium Cigars has given him the platform to introduce a series of cigars that offers the same quality, construction, and detail which he perfected while in Cuba. Brands include the ultra-premium Roberto P. Duran cigar series, Azan cigars, Naya, and Baracoa. Roberto uses a seed-to-humidor approach, as all tobacco is grown in their farms and hand-rolled in their factory in Esteli, Nicaragua. Rollers have been carefully chosen to carry out Roberto's precise method to ensure the progressive flavor in each cigar. Progressive flavor construction is an old Cuban technique where the cigar is designed to increase in strength as the cigar is smoked. This technique, combined with premium tobacco, provides a perfectly balanced and pleasurable smoking experience. Roberto P. Duran invites you to make their premium your standard. Welcome back, everyone. Now we're going to transition into our pre-recorded interview with Rocky Patel, who was also joined by his cousin, Nimish Patel, and his brother, very briefly, Nish Patel. And I do want to get them, both of those gentlemen, back on for a full interview, as well as much of the interview that you're about to watch and listen to was focused on Rocky, and it's fascinating. You guys are going to love this interview. Will, did you have any opening thoughts for the interview we're about to watch?
I tell you what, Rocky, very generous with his time. We're this is one of the interviews Paul and I have really been pining to do for a while. And I tell you what, he was slammed today, and then on top of that, they had the power go out.
That's right.
In the Naples area earlier in the day, and we were getting worried if we were going to get this in, but everything worked out. They were real generous with their time. I think the interview will tell the story there, so I think we head right into it.
Excellent. And now, Rocky Patel. Welcome, everyone, to the Stogie Geek Show. I'm your host, Paul Asadorian. Very excited to be here as we have a very special interview on the lines via Skype. Of course, I have Mr. Will Cooper. Welcome.
Greetings, everybody. I'm great to be here today.
Yes, I'm very excited to introduce our very special guest. We've got, the entire Patel family. This is very exciting. We've got Nimish and Nish Patel on the lines via Skype. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks, man. Always good to see you guys.
Yeah, I'm very excited to talk with you. So I want to start with both of you, each answer this question individually. How did you both get your start in the cigar industry?
Well, my story is pretty funny. I was actually working out in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and Rocky would call me, hey, come on down, come join the company, this, that, and the other. And I had a pretty good job going, so I didn't really want to do it. Mm-hmm. And he would call me every so often. One night we used to be owned by a mom and pop operation, and they sold it to a corporation. I went from being a manager to a robot, and I got into it with the people. And Rocky just happened to call me that evening, and I told my wife, I'm going to go out there and check it out. So I flew out to California. Of course, Rocky was late picking me up. The night before, we go have some drinks. We went to Schatzi's on Main, I think it's called. Oh, yeah. And we were hanging out there, and then we go over to Rocky's house, and he says, hey, be ready at 9 o'clock in the morning. We're going to go to the office. So I get ready, and I wanted to impress his people, so I put on a suit and everything. I'm like, Rocky, it's 9 o'clock. We got to go. He goes, just go downstairs. I'll be right there. Little did I know, I walked downstairs, there's the office. He's got a girl named Polo running the entire operation for him. It was run all out of his basement in his house. It was pretty cool.
Oh, that's funny. That's awesome.
That's how it all started from there.
Guys, I'm going to move away. Rocky just came in.
Well, Nish, I got a question for you.
Yeah, Nish, what?
How are you?
Hey, Rocky, how are you?
Good. Sorry for the delay. Just had a crazy day, and
Anyway, you don't want to hear. I'm
Yeah.
glad to be here.
No
We
worries.
appreciate it. We appreciate it.
Welcome to the show, Rocky. It's nice to talk with you.
My pleasure, my pleasure.
I've had a lot of questions for you that have been just burning on my brain for a long time, so this is very exciting for me.
Well, good. I'm happy, and I apologize again for the delay, but we're trying to change the predicate date on the FDA, and I was on a conference call with like 14 people about how we can get that done and switch it to the date the FDA regulation comes, so I couldn't get off the call, and
No
unfortunately,
worries.
I'm sorry about it.
Yeah, no, we'll talk about that a little later in the interview for sure. I wanted to ask you first, Rocky, how you get your start in the cigar business.
Well, I was practicing in law in Los Angeles, and I was working in the entertainment industry with film financing, representing actors, contractual work. And then pretty soon I found myself on some of the movie sets, and many of the actors were waiting for lighting, sound, makeup, and they started smoking cigars. And so I kind of started smoking cigars with them. And the first cigar I had was, I think, a Macanudo Prince Philip. This is 1990. 91, 92, something like that. And I really didn't know much about cigars. And then my office was on Beverly Drive, and the Grand Havana Room was opening right next to my office, and I was one of the original founding members. So I would go there and hang out and smoke a cigar after work. And pretty soon I was a regular there. And somebody approached me, a young kid named Philip Zangi, approached me to make cigars kind of for fun as an investment. And we just started playing around and making cigars. And at that time, we sold everything because of the boom. We went to our first show in Cincinnati, and people were coming with briefcases of cash, like 20,000, 25,000. Send us whatever you can. And looking back, those cigars are pretty terrible because we had other people make them for us, and they were made quickly with who knows what the blends were. And, the blend would change from cigar to cigar. But that was all coming to an end, and I saw it come to an end. All the hundreds of cigar companies, Don, whoever started in those days, it was coming to an end. And I realized that, my partner that I had was not working as diligently as I wanted. We had some issues where we got sued by Indian Motorcycle Company. The brand was called Indian Tobacco. He claimed he had the license for it. He never had the license. Pretty soon I was deeply vested with the big investment in this company, and so I said I better take this seriously. So I went down to Nicaragua, Honduras, Dominican, asked a lot of dumb questions, worked in the farms and the curing and the fermentation, started learning about tobacco, spent a lot of time blending and making thousands of blends to educate my palate. Now, of course, this was over a 4 or 5 year period. It didn't happen instantly, and I felt like I had a good palate because I love to cook and I love to eat and I love wine. And so the blending and tasting came to me very easily. And what I saw was that, a lot of people out there were cheating the system or taking steps, whether it's in fermentation, whether it's in construction. I just saw a lot of things that they would, cut corners on. And so when we finally wanted to have our own production, we decided to employ the strictest quality control standards, make sure we take the time to not cheat the system, whether it's in the growing, the curing, the fermentation, the construction. And so we kept that true to ourselves. And when I felt comfortable that we could achieve that, had the autonomy to achieve that, that's when I decided to put our own name on the cigar and hence call it the Rocky Patel.
Excellent. So, Rocky, I wanted to ask you about one of your earlier cigars, the Old World Reserve. Now, our Stogie Geeks listeners are some of the geekiest cigar people. I mean, they really get into tobacco and a lot of different blends. And when we talk about Rocky Patel cigars, they always bring up the Old World Reserve. And they say, when the Old World Reserve first came out, I loved that cigar. It was fantastic. And then at some point, a lot of people mentioned that there was a shift and it didn't quite fit their palate. Can you explain kind of that shift, since that question comes up all the time on our show?
Well, it's interesting. The Old World Reserve was one of the original blends we made that was on the richer, fuller-bodied side on the Rocky Patel line. Now, the Old World Reserve is interesting because it actually has 5 different fillers in it, compared to most of our cigars that has 4 fillers, a binder, and a wrapper. So when you have 5 fillers into a cigar, it makes it more complicated to make. It makes it complicated to control the quantity of the same leaf going into the cigars, because now your materials have gone to 7 different leaves and 7 different variables from 4 or 5 different variables. But I can tell you that, you know, the blend has not changed on that cigar. What people do need to realize, having said that, is that tobacco from the rainy season is different than tobacco from the dry season. And so in wine, vintage to vintage, everybody expects the wine to be different. But
So
in
wait, Rocky,
cigars,
you can't control the weather? You haven't progressed to the point where you can control the weather?
I'm not that good. I'm
His
not
rain
very
dance
good.
isn't that good.
Yeah, my rain dance. But but I will say this, you know, what we've started doing now since that era is really sorting the tobaccos into primings. So as opposed to having Ligero, Viso, and Seco, I break that tobacco down into 8 primings. So when we start picking at the bottom, it's the first priming, second, third, fourth, all the way to the 8th. So now when we make a blend, I'll say I want the 7th priming from a particular farm in Esteli, Nicaragua, the 6th priming from a particular farm in Jamastran, Honduras, the 5th priming from a particular farm in Costa Rica. This way it ensures that every cigar has the same leaf, with the same fertilization, the same fermentation from box to box, cigar to cigar. So when we get crops from the rainy season versus the dry season, we know that in the dry season we use the 4th or 5th priming. Well, in the rainy season, that blend will now go to the 6th or 7th priming to
Oh,
balance
interesting.
off the mildness in that particular strain, in that particular leaf. So it's like engineering, almost like chemistry. So we've gotten better at that now. And with our newer blends for the last 4 years, and Old World Reserve is a much older blend. So we didn't do that back then. So that probably affected or changed the cigar. So now we've gotten down to a science where we actually take that. So the decade is consistent cigar to cigar. You know, not everything is perfect, or even sometimes when you have the same priming, the same leaf, the weather elements, certain things happen and the taste profile changes. We measure the soil samples to make sure the exact amount of potassium, magnesium, boron is in the soil. So we're trying to do our best, but it is a human man-made agricultural product, and it can't be like a widget.
Yeah, it sounds like you've added some extra dimensions to the blending process, which is extremely impressive. Rocky, tell me about the vintage 1990 and 92. I feel like those were some of your breakout blends. Certainly my first Rocky Patel cigars I smoked were the vintage 1990 and 92. You know, what was that like to create that blend and have it really take off in the beginning?
Well, you know, it was interesting because I got quite lucky in the fact that we were trying to get a hold of our own production. And what happened is I had a relationship with a number of people, Bent Am, Larry Palumbo, and a few other people at the UST factory. And UST at that time was making, I forget the brands, I know Helix came later, but there were Don Tomas and Astral and a few other blends. And they were having some trouble because they were trying to get out of the premium side. They bought a couple $100 million worth of great tobacco. And they made the mistake to give their tobacco to their cigars to Southern Wine and Spirits, who basically put it out in every gas station. The retailers kind of blackballed them, and they weren't doing well. So they were looking for business, and I approached them and I said, listen, you have this amazing 10-year-old Sumatra wrapper from Ecuador. You've got this great 12-year-old broadleaf wrapper you grow in Talanga in Honduras. And then there's this 8-year-old Dominican Olor and Piloto. You have some Matafina. So I was able to make a deal with them where I was able to secure all their aged tobaccos that I wanted for the vintage 90 and 92 as long as I made the cigars there. Now, what I did is I was able to allow them to give me complete control in that factory. So we created a little factory in their factory. I mean, the place was gigantic, and they barely had that many people working. It's a giant factory, yeah. And then we grew it. But, you know, we controlled the sorting of the leaves. We controlled the fermentation of the leaves. We've controlled the how the cigars were made, the production, the draw testing, all of that. And then once we were able to do that, that was the first time I lent my name from Indian Tobacco to a cigar, and that's really how we created the vintage, and it took off for us.
Tell them how many blends we had before we chose.
Yeah, I made 158 different blends
Oh, wow.
before we finally chose that one particular blend. And that, that's a very interesting leaf because that has Dominican Olor Ligero, Dominican Olor Piloto Ligero. It's got one leaf of Brazilian Mata Fina. It's got Viso from Esteli and Ligero from Jalapa. So a lot of heavy tobaccos, but that's not a full-bodied
It's
cigar
not,
because
no.
the age of that tobacco is so old and is so well fermented that it actually is very, very well balanced.
Rocky, do you still make the mini Bellicoso in that vintage series?
No, we stopped making that a while back.
That's too. Do you have any of those left? Because that was my favorite size.
Well, we have some mini bellicosas coming out now in like the Hamlet and on the 20th anniversary that we're coming out with.
Excellent.
The trade
Yeah,
show.
that's a great little size. Rocky, tell me about the Decade and the Edge. Those came a little later, correct?
They did. So the Edge preceded the Decade. In 2004, I decided that I want to make something that is very kind of natural, something that feels like you're right at the factory, picking it up right from the rolling tables. So we made the Edge without bands in these 100-count trays that people could kind of just reach into and dig out. And, that was the inspiration. And everyone thought I was crazy. Nobody's going to buy cigars in a 100-count box. And I kind of had the lid opening forward so you could see the beautiful foot of all the 100 cigars. And we had the Costa Rican Maduro wrapper. I think we were the first ones and still one of the only ones to use a lot of Costa Rican wrapper that had a very nutty caramel flavor to it. And then, of course, the tobaccos in the blend, and it was a secret blend. There's one country that we use 50% of tobacco from that we don't disclose that I call Bangladesh, but it's really not Bangladesh.
Rocky, to speak to the marketing of that, I remember being in a shop, and the shop owner had taken out that gigantic crate, of 100 cigars and opened it up, and just the visually appealing and the aroma that came from the box was just, I mean, you couldn't not buy one after the retailer, put it out and opened it up. The aroma was just wonderful.
Yeah, and it's really cool because those cigars retain a lot of oil on the wrapper because there's no newspaper to hold it. There's no cloth to hold it. It was not packed in, when we first came out with them, they were all non-celloed because I wanted to show the beautiful oils on the wrapper, and it had a Caro, and so it was a great blend. It was the first time I smoked that blend, I said, we're onto something. This is so unusual. This is so different. And then when we had to procure that tobacco from this secret country, it was very, very hard to get. And we were getting very little at the beginning because nobody was growing there, and we had to wait to kind of start growing more and more and more tobacco from that region. And at that time, when you don't control your own farming, we also had variances in the crop. And so we had to be very, very selective to make sure the leaves from 100% of the crop, we might be able to use 25 or 30% of the filler just to guarantee the consistency. So we've gone through a lot of trials and tribulations in the background that I don't think most of the customers realize how much work goes into it. Because I always tell people, you can remember the 100 good cigars you smoke, but you forget the 100 good cigars you smoke. They remember the one bad one, and in order to eliminate that, in order to make sure there's consistency in our cigars, I mean, we've stopped production on Edge for 4 to 6 months at a time. Decades sometimes for 4 months because one particular leaf is just not right, needs more time, needs more fermentation, or we're waiting for the next crop because the crop that showed up didn't have the same flavor profile from a particular farm in Costa Rica or wherever else. So it's pretty labor intensive and cumbersome. It's a fun business. I love it, but it's also very difficult.
What was your reaction a year or so after that when you released The Decade and you received the rating in Cigar Aficionado?
I knew that it was a great blend. Again, I love the balance of it. I love the richness, but I love the balance. And again, we have one leaf in the Decade too. That's Secret Country. But I
now
just
wait,
thought
the
it had
same
so
secret country or a different secret country?
Secret country.
Same secret country. Okay.
Yeah. And believe it or not, it had so much flavor, but it was just balanced and smooth, and the box press was great. And I mean, I really honestly, now I don't look at ratings. We just have so much going on politically and so many other issues that sidetrack me. I'm lucky if I open Cigar Aficionado to look at the ratings. But you know, they used to annoy me at the beginning. It was very, very important. And now I just take that channel that energy towards working harder and making better product. But, you know, I was thrilled with the rating, obviously, very excited about it. I thought it was our best work. I thought we, you know, knowing that it's our 10th anniversary decade cigar, we were very proud that we came across that blend and were able to, you know, make that blend.
Now, obviously, it had grown in popularity, and so much so that today, when I talk to even the most casual cigar smoker, a lot of my neighbors, in fact, are, you know, casual cigar smokers, and they often consult with me. But there's one thing that holds true in probably 90% of the casual cigar smokers that I run into. They all ask me, hey, have you tried Rocky Patel cigars? What is it that you do? What's the secret sauce in your marketing that you're able to achieve that level of brand notoriety amongst even the most casual of cigar smokers?
I think what we're known for is consistency. I think when you pick up one of our cigars, you can guarantee it's going to have a great draw. You can guarantee it's going to burn well. You can smoke it all the way to the end without it getting that bitterness, without it getting that ammonia, because it's not holding the fertilizer from the farm. It's all been fermented long enough to bleed that out. And so I think we have unique taste profiles. We have a very diverse taste profile. But the most important thing is, I think when you get a Rocky Patel cigar, you're going to get a very consistent cigar that you know you can smoke and enjoy.
Now, Rocky, how many cigars in a given year are being produced under your brand name?
Well,
Including private labels?
Yeah, including private labels.
yeah, we do. We make quite a few private labels and things like that. But I would venture to say it's anywhere between like 18 million,
to 19.
19 million.
Cigars per year that come out of your factories.
Yes.
That's very impressive. That's very impressive. So, what goes into ensuring the quality above and beyond some of the things you've already discussed of that large number of cigars coming out of your factories?
So that's the hardest part. It's easy for anyone to make a small batch of anything and make it consistent. And so the most important thing in this whole equation is acquiring great tobacco. And we have managed, and we're lucky to have a relationship with the Plasencia family, one of the biggest growers of Cuban seed tobacco in the world, to procure a lot of great raw materials. And that's wrapper, binder, and filler, especially wrapper and ligero, which is some of the hardest things to get. And at one time, we're sitting on 18 to $20 million worth of these raw materials, and we keep stockpiling them because it's hard to make chicken salad out of chicken shit. And so, you know, the fact being that we have these raw materials allows us to have consistent cigars. And then after that, of course, the fermentation process, the curing process. I mean, we spent 4 or 5 years minimum on the 7th and 8th primings, on the 6th and 5th primings, 2.5, 3 years. So, you know, spending the time, turning the tobacco, being patient, not moving it through, making sure that everything sits long enough before we produce a cigar. I think that's allowed us to grow and be consistent, because I can guarantee you this much: we would certainly not be making anywhere near these numbers if we were making cigars that the consumer thought were inadequate or not good enough or not consistent enough. So it's taken time to get there. It didn't happen overnight. And it's been, you know, like I said, a 20th year, and for years and years, we've been basically putting money back into buying tobacco. Look at your digs and look at our digs.
Yeah, there's certainly a cost to maintaining that much inventory. That's extremely expensive.
Yeah. And that's the only way you can do it. I mean,
And
there's
we're still learning.
There's no hidden secret. Investing in tobacco is the only way. And now we have our own farms in Esteli and Condega. That helps a lot. But, you know, it's a learning experience. But all those other quality control standards I mentioned, along with having the inventory of the right tobacco.
Now, Nimish and Rocky, I want you both to answer this next question of maybe what you've been smoking lately of all Rocky Patel branded, you know, cigars. Which ones are your favorite? Like, which ones do you go to the most often of all the cigars that you make?
Mine is the Super Ligero and the Nimi D, of course.
My 2 new favorites, I mean, typically I enjoy the Decade as my go-to and the 15th anniversary, but the 2 new loves are Royale and Super Ligero. I really
How
love
about
those
bold?
two.
It's pretty smoky.
Bold, I like bold when I like a nice spicy, peppery cigar after a big meal.
Yeah,
So I do
yeah.
enjoy it, but
Yeah,
but
Well,
different.
one thing I will tell you, the new cigars we got coming out this year, one of them is my favorite. It's going to be amazing. And
Which one
Rocky,
is that, Nimish?
Can I tell them, Rocky? Can we let
Go
the
ahead.
world know? Obviously, this is our 20th year in business, and we're coming out with our 20th anniversary. We're coming out with a natural and a Maduro, and it's going to rock the world. I think the cigar is probably the best cigar we have.
and
Which
we
one-
worked on this blend for a year and a half, 2 years.
Excellent.
Well, I'll
Nim-
be honest, I've only smoked the natural. Rocky was down at the factories, and he put a Maduro wrapper on there, and I've only smoked one of those, but that was really good too. But I've smoked a lot more of the naturals.
you prefer the natural.
Yeah, well, because I've only had one of the other
Yeah.
ones, so I haven't had a chance to judge everything.
So, Rocky, your 20th anniversary cigar, it's obviously very exciting for you. Can you tell us a little bit about the tobaccos that are going into that cigar?
Well, we have some really, really, really old wrapper. It's a Habano wrapper from Ecuador. We've got, and then we've got some. I don't want to give away the blend, but I'll say that some of the tobacco is from our own farm, and then we have some, really interesting binders in the Matafina, and you'll just have to wait and see. It's I would say it's like a decade on steroids. It's rich but well balanced. A lot of flavor. It took a long time in the making, and we've been meticulous about it. And then the Maduro, we really started with just the natural. And then I said, let me try to put a Maduro leaf on the same blend and try it. And it smoked. It was great. So they're both going to be very, very interesting.
So how does it start when you come up with a new blend, especially something that special? Do you have a flavor profile in mind? Do you have like a food or some kind of flavor source that you draw from? Or do you think about some of the tobacco that you have in inventory and how it work well together? Like what starts the process for you?
Well, the first thing we look at is what character and dimension and strength of cigar we want to make. So if we want to make a medium to full-bodied cigar, then in that medium to full-bodied range, what is going to make this cigar different than all the other cigars we make, and what is going to make it different than our competitors' cigars? And you start with trying to, we've created this monster ourselves. I think I'm responsible for a lot of this because we make so many different blends. And in the old days, people used to just stick to one particular brand. And in the wine industry, people drank Chardonnays and Rosés and Chablis, and then wine. All these great wineries came out, and they started educating the public, and the Shiraz and Petit Syrahs and Cabs and wines out of Australia, South Africa. Well, we've done the same thing. So we're always searching for your unique flavor profile, searching tobaccos from unique and distinct regions, distinct farms. And so then the basic characteristics of tobaccos from Esteli, Jalapa, Jamastran, Dominican. Then you try and play around with ways to ferment it, change the fermentation process, look for different countries, different origins, different binders. And then, 95% of the time you miss. And then maybe more than that. And then every once in a while you get there, I'm close, and then you got to start all over, changing one priming, changing another priming, then sometimes changing a binder, changing a filler, maybe the wrapper. So it's like a cooking recipe where we're cooking with all these ingredients, and you just keep playing around with the marinade, with this, with that, and that's how it works.
So now, do you? What's the ratio of farms and factories that you own and ones where you kind of source the tobacco? Like, tell us about how that's kind of structured at Rocky Patel.
So, in Nicaragua and Esteli, we're completely vertically integrated. We have our own farms. We have our own pre-industry. We do our own sorting, stripping, curing, fermentation, manufacturing. We own the farm and packaging. In Honduras, we have a joint venture relationship with the Plasencia family, where they own the building, they handle the payroll, but we have our own people and our own tobaccos there, where we have our own people in the sorting, in curing, in fermentation, all our own supervisors in production, all under our payroll, and we basically manage and run the factory but we don't want to deal with the headaches of the unions and the local Honduran laws and everything else, and they do that. And there, we obviously, and just like even in the factory Nestali, we buy tobacco from other great growers like Plasencia, like ASP, like the Olivas, like many others around the world, Brazilian tobaccos, Matafinas, and several other broadleaf, Pennsylvania broadleaf, Connecticut. So we buy from all over. And then we also use tobaccos that are from our own farms in Condega and also in Esteli.
You have other factories you produce some stuff.
Oh, and then, sorry. And then, obviously, I forget about the Java that's produced with Drew Estates, and that's a great collaboration. And then, the vintage is still made in that original UST factory where we had a factory within a factory, which was since bought over and taken over in a deal by General Cigar.
What's some of, and I'll ask you both this question, what's some of your favorite tobacco to work with? Like, do you have like a go-to that of a certain tobacco or a certain plant or a certain region that you're just really favorable and it's easy to work with? And then are there some that are difficult to work with, and what's the reward?
Well, I mean, I certainly like Costa Rica. I think the Costa Rican tobacco is very, very unique in flavor than all the other Central American tobaccos. I find a lot of nuttiness, a lot of caramel, a lot of sweet aromas in the Costa Rican tobacco. Esteli, obviously, if you want strength and if you want a lot of power and richness, everyone's familiar with that tobacco. But I like to also work with the tobacco from Jamastran, Honduras. I think it has a lot of balance, a lot of sweetness to it. It takes any blend that is full and rich and in your face and just kind of makes it more complex. So I would say that those are probably some of my favorite tobaccos. And then lastly, the secret tobacco from the secret country of Bangladesh.
The secret sauce.
I mean, that secret sauce has been very lucky for us and successful, and I think it's kind of awesome.
Well, in any business, you need a differentiator, and it sounds like that's been one of your big differentiators.
It is. So, and we're searching. Listen, we're working next year, hopefully, to start growing some tobacco in India. I know they grow tobacco for cigarettes and many other products there, but we've kind of been researching some soils and some regions there to try and see what happens there. So we're always searching for unique places to see, whether we can find another secret sauce.
Nimish, how about yourself?
Yeah, I really enjoy the Ecuadorian Sumatra wrapper. I love the flavor, the spice of that. My heart is always with Honduras because that's where he started. So the Jamastran tobacco has a lot of sweetness. I'm really enjoying some of the stuff that we're doing out of Brazil right now. It's Brazilian Matafina.
So you both mentioned this Super Ligero, and I smoked it for the first time this week. And I'm not saying this just because you're on the show. I really dig this cigar. It has this combination of saltiness and sweetness, especially in the first third, that's just wonderful. What can you tell us about this cigar and this blend? What was it like to create it?
Well, the one good thing about that cigar, we have a special leaf in there that no one else has. We did a crossbreed with the Plasencia family in Costa Rica, and they created this strand of tobacco called Super Ligero. And we have that leaf in there. So, in our opinion, no other cigar in the world tastes like that because no one else has that tobacco.
That would explain why it's special and sticks out when you smoke it.
Yeah.
That's great. Now, what sizes? I'm told this is also in a Lancero size. I'm smoking, I believe, the Toro size.
We have Lancero, Robusto, Toro, and 6x60.
Yeah, it's you did a fantastic job with this blend.
Thank you.
Now, the Prohibition is also a new release. You can see the jars in the background of my shot and also in the background there in your office as well. The Prohibition packaging really stands out to me. I love these jars. I love the tobacco on the top and the bottom, and they're both very good cigars. So what can you tell me about those?
Well, we decided to make a cigar that would kind of point out the tough times we face right now with regulation. And it almost reminds me of the days of, Prohibition whiskey. If the FDA regulation option 1 is what they were trying to put into place, would wipe out 75 or 80% of the industry. And so to kind of, point that out, we decided to come up with a cigar that was packaged in like old Prohibition jars and these crates like Prohibition whiskey. And we wanted to make something more on the fuller, richer side, so we got this great wrapper from San Andres in Mexico. We have another wrapper that's a broadleaf wrapper. It's rich. I think the cigars have a lot of body to them. The San Andres wrapper has a little bit of white pepper, some spicy, peppery notes to it. I think the broadleaf is more kind of very gummy, chewy, kind of dark caramel coffee to it. And so we had a couple good blends, and we decided, let's come out with something Prohibition. If you look at a rich bourbon from the old days or moonshine, you kind of have to grit your teeth when you take a shot, like watching the Westerns. So I think the cigars are kind of along that line.
Yeah, I can't decide which one I like better. I keep going back and forth between them, and they're both really good. I could definitely see myself smoking one of these out in the summer, on the deck, having a barbecue. It's a wonderful cigar. It's an easy cigar to smoke. Fantastic flavor from both of them. I enjoyed both of them.
We go back and forth. Rocky is more of the broadleaf, and pretty much everyone else in the Rocky Patel family is on the San Andreas side. So that's all I was going to ask you, which one you like better.
Yeah. No, that's great. Will, I want to turn it over to you to ask some questions as well. I'll let you pick where you want to go next.
Okay. So Rocky, Nimesh, thanks for the time, by the way. Really appreciate it. I know you guys have a busy schedule. I actually just got back from a tour of your facilities last month, and I talked about it on the show. I was blown away, and everything you talked about.
That was Honduras, Will, right?
Honduras and Nicaragua.
Oh, both. Okay.
Both.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and that's one thing that's really interesting is we got to see the compare and the contrast of the two. Now, the one thing I was really blown away with is when I went into your factory, and I don't mean this. I guess I don't have a better word. It's very boutique-like. I mean, it's a smaller factory, but there's a very intimate feel to that factory. Can you talk a little about that?
Yeah, they're two totally different factories. I mean, when we started in Honduras, we started small, very small. And, we're in this factory that is gigantic. The ceilings are very, very high. It's like one of the state-of-the-art factories built by an American company with fire sprinklers. I think the ceilings are like 40 feet high or 60 feet high. And it kind of gives you this magnanimous view when you walk in, and it's spectacularly clean. You can eat off the floor. And there, we wanted to just be very consistent with the cigars we make. And we had very strict standards there. When we decided to open this boutique factory in Nicaragua, we kind of decided to make sure the bunching was different. It wasn't an accordion bunch. We didn't have the Liebethals. Everything was completely hand bunched, tubular rolled, like the old Cuban way. The cigars are triple cap. We use 2 binders versus a single binder. So we just wanted to change up the artistry of how the cigars are made in Nicaragua versus Honduras. Not that one is better than the other. It's absolutely just different and unique. And the other thing it allowed us to do is we could make smaller ones where we didn't have vast amount of tobacco, but it was good tobacco, so we could make cigars in a limited sense, in a smaller capacity, because we didn't have the scale of the tobacco that was needed for big runs. And so it was an opportunity to that's more our art gallery, something different and fun. And Honduras is just a different animal where, it's a much bigger factory. But then we also have some of our best blends come from Honduras, like the Edge, like the Decade. So just 2 different things, and we felt like we wanted to have both at our disposition.
No, they're both, like I said, that you see the quality control at these factories. I mean, like it's at both levels. It's amazing when you go on a tour and you actually see this. The other thing I've been real interested in is one of the tobaccos you introduced in 2012 into your vintage series was the Cameroon. And since then, now you've added Cameroon to the Decade, and I love both those cigars. Now, Cameroon is a difficult wrapper to work with, from what I understand, and it's also a difficult wrapper to procure. So how have you addressed some of those challenges working with that wrapper?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The wrapper is very fragile, very, very thin. When you're working with it, you get a lot of waste because it's easy to tear that wrapper. but it has such great sweetness that I love the wrapper. It's also very difficult to procure because the wrapper size is very, very small. It's hard to get wrappers that are big enough for even a Toro. So you have to collect the wrapper. In the case of this vintage, we collected it for 7 or 8 years to get enough wrapper that had the right size and that was clean. You get a lot of pinta spots. The wrapper's grown outside when the rain hits it. Because the wrapper being so fragile thin, you get a lot of rain spots on it, discoloration on it. So out of 100% of the total wrapper, you might have a 20% yield that you can actually use on cigars, and that's why it took us for a long time to collect it before we could release it in the vintage 2003 or in the decade Cameroon.
Excellent, excellent. In terms of the decade Cameroon, did you pretty much start with the decade blend and then just put a Cameroon wrapper on it, or is it a completely different blend?
No, it's it's absolutely the decade blend. The only thing we changed is put the Cameroon wrapper on it. And it's round versus box press. And you know, sometimes you can take a cigar that is box pressed or a cigar that is round with the same blend and they taste quite different. It's amazing to me when you take a cigar and you box press it, it takes all the air out through the tobaccos. The cigar burns cooler but richer, like a carburetor in a car. It's getting less air, so it's not burning as hot, but it almost takes that cigar on a scale of 1 to 10. If it's a 9 as far as the body and the richness, it almost brings it down to about a 6 or 7 because it burns so much cooler that you don't feel the acid in the cigar.
Yeah, a great example of that was when you box pressed the 2003 vintage in 2013, that special edition. You're right, it almost had that feel of a completely different cigar, just kind of amped down a little like that.
Exactly, it does. It just smooths it out.
So, in terms of what you've been, you kind of talked about this earlier on. You've been selfless in terms of how much time you've donated to fighting for cigar rights. And, we see it, you're very visible. People in the industry talk about the time you've put into this. How hard, well, before we get into some of these questions, how hard was it to kind of pull yourself away from the business? Because you have pulled yourself, it's got to impact your business in terms of, you seem like you're a hands-on guy. You seem like you like rolling up your sleeves and getting into the tobacco. But yet you've made all this time to spend a lot of time in Washington. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's very difficult. I don't think it was a matter of choice. I felt that for the industry to survive, for our company to survive, I felt like I had to do it. I didn't see anybody taking the baton and running with it, and I was very fearful. I'd go to bed at night not worrying about the competition. I'd go to bed worrying about the government. And so, I used to be in Honduras every other week. Sometimes I'd be there for 2-3 weeks at a time, come back for a week, back there for 2-3 weeks at a time. And now, for the last 3 years, I'm lucky if I get out there once a quarter. And, I'm in Washington every 2 weeks. I've spent a lot of time there, and I just felt like you had to be involved to push the ball forward. And whether it's, meeting Congress, meeting senators, walking the halls, lobbying, meeting with the people from the White House, Office of Management and Budget, the FDA folks. It's a constant battle of educating them one at a time. The first time you walk in the office, you get a friendly shrug, or we're not interested, or we're scared to upset the American Cancer Society folks, the Tobacco-Free Kids folks, and then you slowly educate them and show them the differences between all of the tobacco products and cigars. And I explained to them, I said they're enjoyed like a single malt scotch or a glass of wine. We don't have any youth access issues. It's enjoyed to celebrate. There are no health studies showing any deadly hazards with smoking a cigar. And, it takes a while to get that message through. And it's been a chore, a lot of work. I think we've made great leaps and bounds. We've really succeeded in educating Washington educating some of these administrators. I remember the first FDA meeting I had, they asked me, oh, why do you put cellophane on cigars? I mean, they knew nothing about cigars. So, you know, I think we needed it. I think it had to be done. Um, and this battle is something that we're married to for the rest of our life, only because we have too many antis that are organized working against us. Unfortunately, the World Health Organization, Tobacco Free Kids, American Lung Society, American Cancer Society, they all have a lot of money, they're well organized, and they want to wipe out the tobacco from the face of the planet. And they don't distinguish between premium cigars and all of the tobacco products. On top of which, you have the cigarette companies who are vehemently fighting and want regulation because they believe that they'll be the only ones to survive regulation and there'll be a barrier to entry for everybody else. So, you know, this is a very, very important part. It took us a long time for me to convince our peers in our industry that we need to have our own organization to fight it. Within our own industry, we have machine-made cigars, we have premium cigars, we have other tobacco products, and so they all want to protect their interests. But the love in Washington, D.C. is definitely for the handmade artisan premium cigar category. They understand that it's a very unique industry now. They understand it's an art form. It's appreciated by adults. We don't have the youth access addiction issues. And so far, they haven't proven that there are any health problems with it. So,
And that's an interesting cultural aspect of it, because it seems like the anti-tobacco folks have their own culture that really is just anti-tobacco everything. And for an example, I went to a very large corporation who's made it their pledge to make tobacco-free stores. Their entire corporate campus is tobacco-free. Now here's me pulling in, you know, I've got cigars in my bag. There's tobacco-free signs when you pull in. There's tobacco-free zone signs at the door, in the parking lot, and, you know, very anti-tobacco. And, of course I lit up a cigar on the way out, and I was kind of like, oh my God, am I, something gonna, blow up my car as I leave for, lighting up a cigar? But you're right, it's a cultural thing, right? Cigars have their own culture, and I think it's important to make people understand some of those cultural differences.
Yeah, it is. I mean, listen, they basically are black and white about this. They don't care to differentiate premium cigars from cigarettes. They don't want to take the time. There's a lot of wrong, bad, unethical messaging that comes from some of these big organizations, to the point where I've thought about filing lawsuits against them for defamation and libel, slander against the industry. I mean, their propaganda is BS. They come up with facts and figures that are not supported by any scientific evidence or any evidence at all, and they just loosely throw these numbers out. They throw these studies out. They send letters that I get handed to by staffers in Congress, and we've got to constantly battle that. And I've told all my peers in this industry that we have to have a line item in our budget as a cost of doing business to be involved and organized in Washington and on the state level from here on to survive as an industry. So, one of the things we're all considering that you guys will probably hear about pretty soon is, if you look at Florida orange juice, if you look at Italian wines, French champagne, they have like a self-certification sticker that they put to guarantee their product. So the CRA, and we're hopefully working with IPCPR on this, is going to come up with a Artisan Guild handmade, Cigar Institute certificate sticker that goes on every box. And that sticker, whether it costs us 2 cents or 3 cents or whatever that number is per manufacturer, per cigar, will be passed on to the consumers. And 100% of that money that we raise to stay alive, to lobby and do all the things that we do, will go towards fighting legislation, taxation, smoking regulations, and everything else to survive, because Just the CRA alone spends almost $2.5 million a year in attorneys and lobbyists. I mean, we have specialists in Senate, we have specialists on the House side, we have specialists for the FDA, specialists to work the Office of Management and Budget. So it's ongoing, and that doesn't include the amount of flights and hotel rooms. I mean, it's not cheap to stay in Washington. It costs us $400 a night or $350 a night minimum, and we spend that out of our pockets to go there, to travel there, work there, hand out cigars, pass them out. And it's ironic, the first organization, when they want to do a fundraiser, the American Cancer Society comes to you looking for cigars.
Yeah.
It's just ironic to me how that works. But,
Wow.
and the message I give these guys in Washington, I tell them, listen, we have soldiers that went to Afghanistan, went to Iraq, to protect our freedoms, rights, and privileges to be Americans. They came back in body bags with missing limbs and arms, and here you're taking those same freedoms, rights, and privileges away on a daily basis. It's just totally ironic and full of shit.
Rocky, I watched the New Orleans the city council when they voted that thing in, and I tell you what you said is accurate. That was rammed through with no substantiation, and no one was given time to look at. Apparently, there was more data submitted that really punched a lot of holes into the data they had, and it wasn't even allowed to be looked at. And when I saw that, that was just democracy not at work. When I watched that, and that was just real scary to watch that.
Oh, it's alarming to see how the system works. I mean, most of these organizations are very, very well organized. They kind of make side deals with the local city councilmen, with the mayors, whoever the powers to be, and at the last minute, right before the agenda is about to close, they introduce something, and it doesn't give anybody on the opposition a chance to kind of argue, or a chance to come up with their own facts to kind of turn over the arguments of the laws that are presented, and it just gets railroaded through at the last hour. There is no democracy in it. The one thing I've learned in Washington, D.C., they're really not doing what's right or wrong. All they care about is a couple things, which is getting money and staying in power and getting votes and getting elected. So it's never about what's right and never about what's wrong. And at the end of the day, we have to get organized as adult consumers, enjoying a legal product, and band together like the NRA has to protect our fundamental rights and privileges, and show these politicians that if you don't follow the democratic rules that we have in this country, then we're going to vote you out of office. And that's a strong message, and that's the only thing that hurts them, is not getting the votes and getting into their pocketbooks.
Yep, I agree. Paul?
Do you want to do a contest question now, Will?
Yes, let's do one.
Okay.
Do you want me to do it?
Yeah. Do you have I have a question in mind as well.
Go ahead.
You
You go.
Do you want to give away both jars, or what? Do you want one and one?
One and one.
Okay.
We Rocky and his folks were kind enough to give us a couple of jars of the Prohibition. We have one broadleaf and one Mexican, two outstanding cigars, and you'll get those beautiful jars as well to have as a keepsake.
And so the first jar, since it's closest to me, is the Mexican, the Prohibition Mexican. So it goes by all of our other contest rules, of course, which is send email to the show at stokeygeeks.com and answer the question, the secret tobacco that Nimish and Rocky both mentioned on the show. Which country do they claim that tobacco comes from?
Which is not the actual country.
It's not the actual country, but it's the country they claimed it came from in the interview. Send the answer to that question to the show at stokeygeeks.com. The first person to answer that question correctly will win a Stogie Geeks Smoke Naked t-shirt, of course, and the Prohibition Mexican jar.
Okay, and then want me to do mine?
Yep, go ahead.
So in keeping to the new releases with Rocky, he talked about the Super Ligero, and there's a leaf which became the Super Ligero that's grown in a particular country or cultivated in a particular country. What country is that?
Good questions.
I like it. I like it. Well, Rocky and Nimish, thank you very much for appearing on the Stogie Geek Show. I do have 5 questions for each of you. There are 5 really silly questions, but our listeners love it when we ask these questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the question, and then I'll ask Nimish first, and then Rocky will answer, and then I'll go back and forth. Okay, so are you guys ready?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
good. Nimish, 3 words to describe yourself.
Fun, loving, and gambling.
Rocky? Rocky, 3 words to describe yourself.
Passionate, perfectionist, and determined.
Rocky, if you were a serial killer, what would be your weapon of choice?
Wow.
Scotch.
Nimish?
Oh, my.
Mine would be a nunchuck.
Nimish, if you wrote a book about yourself, what would the title be?
Wow, that's a tough one. Let's see. It would be Fast and Ready.
Rocky?
Don't say I can't.
Nice.
Rocky, in the popular game of Ask Grabby Grabby, do you prefer to go first or second?
What's the game? I don't even know.
Grabby, grabby?
It's Ask Grabby Grabby. Yeah, it's popular in Europe.
Oh, okay.
Ask grabby, grabby.
Wanna go first or second?
It's, well, yeah, I'm going to go first.
Okay, Nimish?
I'm gonna go first too.
Okay.
Can you tell us what that game's about a little bit?
It's completely fictitious and made up, so thank you for playing along. So, Nimish, choose 2 celebrities to be your parents.
I had to choose 2. Wow. I would do Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I would do Michelle Rodriguez. I
Now,
like her.
now, now, Rocky, you spent a lot of time with celebrities, so I really want to know which 2 that you would choose to be your parents.
People that I know or just people that I would choose?
No, it can be any celebrity, alive or dead.
Well, I certainly think Mahatma Gandhi would be one. And the other,
The mom is the tough one, I know.
boy. Sting?
That's not
Excellent, excellent. Oh, that's 2 guys. That's okay. You know, there's nothing wrong. Not that there's anything wrong with that. That's fine. We live in a new age. I'm totally supportive of you, Rocky.
Huh? Oh, God. Think about this one. The
It's
woman
gotta be off the top of your head.
Probably Jacqueline Bisset or somebody like that I can just go, wow.
Excellent. Well, thank you both for coming on the Stogie Geek Show. It was wonderful having you both. Again, thank you for your time. If you could both just stick around after the segment for like a minute or 2, we just have one more question off air for you. But again, thank you very much. And again, those that listen to the segment, you have a chance to win these wonderful jars of Prohibition cigars. We did 2 questions on this segment. And again, both thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Great meeting you guys. Great chatting with you. Angelina Jolie just came to my mind.
There you go. That's the most
That's
popular
about
answer for
just
mom.
about
Yes,
parents.
that's a good choice. Thanks, everyone. That concludes
All
the
right,
segment.
guys. Have a great day.
Thank you.
You too.
Thank you.